Howdy, howdy, lads, MBs, and lasses. If you live in the Harris Branch neighborhood in Austin, Texas, my name is Anthony, and I'm your neighbor. This is another update from the residential Harris Branch HOA meeting, this being the meeting for February. These again happen every third Thursday of the week. You should be getting emails for the meeting with the Zoom link in it via Town Square. The link to that is in the description below. Make sure you sign up for Town Square to get all the updates. That is where all the items, including the budget, are posted for all of our homeowners to review. And if you would like to stay up to date with what's going on in the neighborhood, feel free to hit that subscribe button. That way you'll get a notification every time I post a video. The February meeting came to order at 6:30. We had a forum. All board members were present. The early edition of the executive session at 5:30, that was a new thing that we tried out. There seemed to be a little bit of confusion as far as what was the proper use of the executive session. There was a couple of alignment issues we had with the board that we wanted to discuss. So that is something I think that will continue going forward. However, I think it will be renamed to something else. Number 3, the homeowner forum. There was a couple homeowners. One just wanted to watch. One homeowner was asking for forgiveness on their fines. That is something you can do. If you don't have a long history or repeated offenses, you can certainly come to the board and ask for fines to be forgiven. Understand that when you do, if you get that granted, the cost that the HOA incurs from the attorney for the certified mail, that will still be charged. However, the $25, $50, $100 fines that the HOA has levied, those will be forgiven. So just keep that in mind. You won't necessarily get out of paying everything, but in many instances, especially if it's reasonable, I think in this instance, the homeowner had a friend staying there and they had left some equipment out, and it was during one of the drives, so they caught a fine for it. Keep in mind that if you do rent out your house and you're an absentee landlord, that the fines will still go to you. You can notify your tenants about the fine and move that fine over to them. But if you are not updating your tenants, especially if their emails aren't on the account, then it is only going to you and they're not being notified, then that fine will sit with you. So make sure you're communicating with your tenants anytime there is a fine on your account, so that way you just avoid that whole confusion and frustration. 4, approved prior January 1923 meeting minutes. That was done. 5, the treasurer's report. At this time, I have not moved into the treasurer's position. We have decided to keep that open currently until another board member who is not an officer would like to take that position. At this time, Mike has been doing the treasurer update. There was not much there. I think there was only an irrigation repair at Glencoe and Magnus that got approved and should be resolved at this point. 6, President's report. This mainly revolved around the ice storms. We just had that ice storm right before this meeting, and unfortunately, we have been running into a big issue as far as getting the cleanup figured out. 7, community manager report. Raquel, she had a couple things to go over. Access control to the tennis courts. Those are locks that require you to have a card. Those have been installed, activated. Now there are security cameras being installed at the new building as well. She mentioned the pump room and pool plaster, Heinz Pool and Spa. That's our new pool company. They had to change their bid mainly because they got in there and found that the top of the pool, I believe it's called the coping, is moving around, and so it looks like we're going to have to fully replace that. I think that came out to $26,000. Now, this is where our reserve fund comes into play. That is the large amount of money that is sitting in savings accounts broken up into $250,000 each. That way we're receiving interest on them and they are federally insured. These funds are from studies. We have a reserve study that we do, and the company comes out, looks at everything, says, hey, this is how much it would cost to replace everything in the future. So you need to save up this amount of money. So in the event that it fails, you will have that money ready to go and you can do the repairs without having to raise rates on homeowners or have a budget with a deficit. So in this instance, that will be taken care of from the reserve fund. That's why it's so important to keep that money in the reserve fund and to contribute to it each year. The other item they had mentioned, there is a leak at the pool. As the pool is not holding pressure, they are still working out details on finding that leak. At this time, my understanding is we're still on track to open for the summer. That is assuming they find the leak. I know that should have been approved for them to go search for that here this month. So hopefully they'll find that, get that fixed, and then The next part that we've been looking at is lights. We are checking on this because we would like to do a swim at your own risk pool, not necessarily completely right now, but what we would like to do is have it open early so that way swimmers who show up before the lifeguards are able to use the pool. Now that entails you have to have certain lights inside the pool and a locking mechanism to separate the pool from the amenity center. We're still getting more details on that. Raquel's working on that. So hopefully we might see that implemented this summer. I know a lot of us would like to be out there earlier, and if it's dark out, there are rules and regulations that require lighting in the pool. At least that's what we understand. And so since we're doing this renovation on the pool, currently it makes sense to go ahead and do the lighting as well, so that way we'll just be out ahead of it once we possibly look into just a swim at your own risk completely pool. Raquel mentioned there was no fees for canceling with our old lifeguards. She is still working on occupancy for the new amenity center. Right now she needs to get the blueprints from the city. I think that is the last piece from the inspection. There are still some construction pieces that are needed as far as the ADA ramp and the bike rack. I think those are also pending bids. There is an additional piece. There's repairs at the fitness center, seats, cables, chain sprockets, etc. We looked at that, and the details on the quote were not very informative. We were having a hard time understanding exactly what it was that they were quoting, especially since it was coming out to $8,000. I think at this point we've been able to work back and forth on that quote to understand exactly what it is that's being done, and I believe those parts will start to get ordered this month and then scheduled for repair once they come in. 8, the committee reports, neighborhood representatives. This time we do not have a spokesperson for the neighborhood reps. If you are interested in doing that, please reach out to myself, leave a comment below, or reach out to Mike or Raquel and let them know. Essentially all it is you just gather information from key contacts in the neighborhood about what's going on and bring it to the board. One thing that was brought up was complaints about the trucks along Farmhaven. I believe there's a couple other locations as well, especially with the 18-wheelers, along with other trucks that are being parked along those thoroughfares. This has been an ongoing issue along those thoroughfares. The Austin Police Department assigns a community police officer. His name is Matt Parrott for our Region 3 district. He sent us an email, at least to the board, and one of the homeowners who has been working with them on getting signs in and getting tickets to those trucks. The hot spots that he mentioned, 11,000 block Whitefalds, no 18-wheelers. There are tow-away signs listed on the city ordinance signs, but unless the actual curb is marked with no parking tow-away zone signs, APD can only enforce 1259 with a Class C ticket. I seem to remember the no parking tow-away signs there at one point, but it's possible Austin Transportation changed it up, or the signs were removed by folks that do not want to be towed, and they need to be reinstalled. This again is from the community officer, Matthew Parrott, to the board. He goes on to talk about St Merryn's. There are no 18-wheelers. He did tag a jet ski trailer, which had already received a citation on St Merryn's as an unattached trailer / abandoned vehicle. The 11,800 block on Farmhaven, there are over 9K vehicles parked in the 11,800 block of Farmhaven, but the speed limit in that section is posted 40 miles per hour, and therefore I'm unable to use City Ordinance 1259, which only allows me to cite vehicles on a public street with speed limit of 30 miles per hour or less. The speed does not come down to 30 miles per hour until the 11,300 block Farmhaven. Now, this is something that's very interesting. We see this all the time, especially after the 2020 budget review for APD. It's really important to remember that the APD gets over 39% of our city budget. This almost equals $450 per resident. Each of us pay almost $500 for APD each year. Something to keep in mind, Matthew was one of the officers who wrote to the board complaining about the budget cuts and talking about how he wasn't going to be able to give us the service that we needed. This is a common tactic that APD has used over the years, especially when they don't get their way. But again, when you look at the numbers, they are the biggest part of our budget. Moving to the 11,300 block of Farmhaven, no 18-wheelers. 6,200 block on Boyce Lane, no 18-wheelers. The 6,000 Silicone, 12,400 Titanium. These streets are now under the care, custody, and enforcement control of Park ATX, a pay-to-park mobile app. APD does not have access to see if a vehicle has paid online through apps, so we are unable to enforce the parking issues. It falls appeals on Park ATX to issue their civil fine process. Any possible illegal parking issues on these streets need to be reported to Park ATX. Then we have the 7100 block on Blue Goose. There's an old school bus parked here that is over 9,000 kilos, but it straddles Austin jurisdiction and Travis County jurisdiction. My car was not equipped with GPS, and I would need a car with a computer with GIS mapping to determine if the bus is within AP jurisdiction. Go ahead and pull up Google and use your high accuracy GPS and figure it out, or at the very least, put a citation on it, and if it goes to court and they find out it's on the other side, then let them figure it out. But just to sit there and complain that you don't have a GPS thing in your patrol car seems a bit of a stretch. B, the fence committee. Phase 3 of that is going to be starting. That is another piece that is coming from the reserve fund, to my understanding, for HOA-owned fences. They will be stripped, stained, and sealed, and that should complete the fence process from the fence committee. C, architectural change. Raquel talked about approvals not being done before exterior changes, and particularly there's been a white brick paint that's been going on. This is something that we need to be very careful about and understand, because what is happening is large corporations and firms are coming in and buying homes in the neighborhood and then turning them around and making them generic and then renting them out. So that's something the board is going to have to tackle. I think we'll be able to do that once we get rid of this 67% rule. I think we definitely need to have something in there that'll make it so developers or large firms can't just buy a bunch of homes in our neighborhood and then have all those votes to decide who's on the HOA, and that's something we could address once we move on from the 67% rule that we currently have. Ultimately, when it comes to the ACC, make sure you're submitting, and if you're not sure, just submit it. I have a video on this channel that shows you exactly how to submit your ACC proposal. They normally get it done within 2 to 3 weeks on approval, and once it's approved, you're good to go. D, the amenity center expansion. This, again, I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier. They are waiting on 2 bids to get some items left on the checklist done. These are things like light switches or vents. These are little things that the previous board walked the building and noted that they needed to be addressed, signing off on the complete amount being paid to that contractor. E, communications, just an update about the food trucks. There is a link in the description below to the Facebook neighborhood community resource. Nicole Barata runs that. She's very good about getting updates in creating events for the different trucks that do show up on Fridays, I believe. So make sure you join that group so that way you can stay in touch, as well as getting the updates from Town Square that will tell you which trucks will be out there. F, arts and crafts. I know there was a post on Town Square on this that I responded to. That is still on. There is not an ETA on when that date will be, but when there is, it'll be sent out via Town Square. 9, old business updates. A, the property manager welcoming program and orientation process, waiting on revision from Raquel. That is all done. Again, just waiting on occupancy. B, pending porter service bids. There's cleaning crews for the amenity center. There's some pending bids. We're waiting for 2 bids, as one could not do cleaning in our community, and then we might end up going with the pool company. C, Samsung project. That, again, I think was a pretty big miss on the previous board. However, Mike is currently asking for a summary, as he, of course, has not heard back from Samsung. They kind of fell off the map once they did their little kiosk and cleaning and then left. If anyone's been out to that area, please let me know. Send me some pictures or videos. I'll post them up on the channel so that way other folks can see what's going on. If I have time when I get back from my hiking trip, I will try and make it out there and see what they've done. D, the pool hours extension. Talked about that earlier. We'll move on. E, discussion regarding the dog park. Community managers send announcement to homeowners asking if they're interested. We sent those out. Nobody was interested. I, of course, volunteered to be on it, mainly because I want to ensure we're being smart about what we're doing there. Right now, I'm working with Raquel to pinpoint areas where we can put in trees and then just run water with bubblers out there, so that way we can get some shade, soil stabilization, and then the park will be much more amenable to folks, especially during the heat of the summer. Alamo Concrete, we are dropping that. I've covered that in previous videos, won't be on the next agenda. G, phase 3 of the Clean Stain project with Classic Seal. Again, talked about that earlier. That'll be coming off here. H, the tennis court access control that has been activated. That'll be dropping off the agenda as well. I, budget master amount confirmed. That is in regards to the amount that the residential HOA needs to pay out to the master in regards to the maintenance of the properties along the Harris Branch Parkway. J, the separate reserve monthly financial income statement. Raquel responded with that to the board. K, The homeowner from Parkside with the anti-dog bark acoustic device installed by a neighbor, which is having negative health behavior impact on pets in 2-block radius. Device also can be sensed by people. Homeowner provided HOA rules reference that would appear to apply to this. Resident operating the devices in a rental unit. Actual homeowner has been contacted without success since the owner has nothing in the lease that would allow. Request is for the HOA board management to help resolve the issue. Resident proposed a motion for an amendment to the bylaws, and residents, we have notified the changes to bylaws require a 2/3 majority. Reports have been made via 311. An additional neighbor has also confirmed the complaint. Resident was asked to provide background specifics to the community manager. Community manager will seek legal advice regarding the path to resolution. On this one, it will be dropping off as well, mainly because there has been videos provided from the person with the device that's showing that the dog is actually being a nuisance and sort of problematic. So it turns out that we, again, had only heard one side of the story when the previous board decided to act on this. Now that I'm on the board with the new members, we're much more interested in going to the source of the problem, which is the dog that is barking. I don't think it makes any sense to ban these devices. It makes sense to go ahead and start notifying the homeowner of the dog that is problematic, that you need to go ahead and do something about your animal. I know in this neighborhood we have a very big problem with dogs barking. So if you're having issues with that, please, please, please reach out to the homeowner first. Always talk to the person who has the animal to see what's going on. In many instances, they don't even realize that it's an issue. But if there's an instance where you have talked to them reasonably and respectfully and it's not working out, you're more than welcome to bring that issue to the board and we can look into it. Ideally, we would like to hear from both members that are involved in that, not just one. Elections, the board position pending for treasurer. Valerie still does not feel comfortable taking that role, at least not for her first year. And David, again, declined to take that role. Speed measurement signs. Now, you should have all seen a post on Nextdoor from myself, as well as an email coming out from Town Square, and even I wrote up a thing for the newsletter. There is a post on this channel with information about that. Essentially, there are two things that I wanted to bring up that I mentioned in other videos. There is the issue with the road surface along Farmhaven, as well as speeding, and there is an issue with the speeding on St Merryn. Now, again, remember, we can't put in speed bumps on these areas because emergency vehicles use them. However, I have written up a copy and paste thing, provided a process and a step-by-step guide for you to follow. Just copy and paste what I wrote up. Feel free to edit it, although we really want to make sure we include a couple things. When you go to the 311 portal, you can do it through the app or through the website. There's a link in my walkthrough. Make sure to copy and paste in and ensure that you select the correct location when it asks you for the location. So what we really want to focus on for Farmhaven, at least in my opinion, is to get that road resurfaced. If they're going to come out and resurface that road, it would be really ideal if they went ahead and put in bike lanes, and then they went ahead and put in crosswalks, as well as the speed reading devices that we're requesting. I think those three things will be very useful, especially for our pedestrians and cyclists that come through the neighborhood. Also, it would be really nice to finally go down that road without feeling like you're on the ocean. The second piece is St Merryn. Now, this road surface is relatively fine. There's not a lot of issues with it, so we don't need it resurfaced. So in the language that I wrote up, it's more about reducing the speeding because people do like to blow down that street at 60, 70 miles an hour sometimes. And one of the best things, something I talked about in the previous video, is doing traffic calming devices. This includes narrowing the roads, putting in crosswalks, things to make it so it's less easy for them to feel like they're safe to go that speed. In addition to that, we really want to include the speed reading devices. I think these are great spots to start at before we look into something else because it does two things. It provides safe crosswalks for pedestrians. I know there's been instances where homeowners have almost been hit trying to cross over to get their mail, and as well as cyclists, it'll give them a lane for them to be in. And on top of that, until we start to really work this out with our sidewalks, it'll also kind of make space for pedestrians who want to walk not on the sidewalk. It'll give them a protected lane to be in as well. So please, please, please go ahead and follow those instructions. Make sure you submit to 311 because ideally what we want it to do is trend. We want enough people, and there's 2,020 homeowners here, that they'll be like, whoa, that's a lot of people asking for this. Let's prioritize it so that way we don't have to hear from them over and over again. Now, this is just a tester. I understand there are plenty of other spots throughout the communities that need work. I have heard, folks reach in. But right now, what we'd like to do is just focus on these 2 roads and see if this works, so that way we can then start applying it to the next road that we need to start focusing on. In legal path information to remove the 67% in the bylaws, we were provided that from Connie, so big win for us. Definitely had to drive that one down. She was not too happy about us pushing for that. Neither was David or Mike. They really wanted us to say exactly what it is we wanted to remove. Now understand, the goal is to remove the 67% and to place in a more reasonable number, 20%, 29%. Something in that range. That way we can actually get homeowners engaged. In a perfect world, I really hope to have a way for all of you to vote on these things electronically. So that way you can just log into the app, hit yes or no, and then participate in a lot of these things, and it'll be a lot easier for us to get that amount of homeowners participating once we reduce it to an actual realistic number. And it'll also allow the HOA to really start dealing with things like the large firms that are buying homes. It'll also allow us to start reaching out to you guys and say, hey, what do you guys want us to do? And then we'll get ideas, and then we can put them in a vote format, and the community can vote on it, and we can start doing things and have everybody participate and have their voice heard if they want. Oh, the Gmail account emails for board of directors. This is one of Vanessa's items that I think was a big win, especially because now it takes all the HOA emails and puts it in a separate email account. Before, we were all using our personal emails, and it was just a pain in the butt when you were trying to sort through things with personal in the HOA. Hopefully in the future, maybe if we have a more tech-savvy board, we could do a chat channel. P, community enhancement enrichment goals list and survey to be sent to residents. This is still in the works. One of the big things that I brought up, I'll call it the green wall of Farmhaven and St Merryn. We have had issues, and people have complained about the fences along those routes over the years. There are 2 ways that we could address this as the board. One, we could start going after homeowners because those fences are owned by homeowners. We could start going after them and fining them. I'm not a big fan of punitive procedure to get people to do things. I think that should be the last thing you should do. So that was something I fought against heavily, because I don't think we should be going and fining people for fences if our goal is to get cooperation with them replacing and repairing them. The second option we have as the board is to take over the maintenance of those fences. This, again, was something that I thought was a wild idea to do. One, it would be an insane amount of cost to maintain all those fences along those thoroughfares, and you had all sorts of issues that I brought up as far as, what if a homeowner breaks it? How will we prove that it was them? How will we ensure that, when the work crews come through and they damage something or have to cut down one of their trees, or, their pets are out when the work crew comes and then the pet gets loose, all sorts of liability issues on top of the insane amount of cost. So what I had proposed is we do a green wall, because the space between the sidewalk and the fences is owned by the HOA. It's a right of way, and we already have some trees along it, although they took a beating during this ice storm. What I proposed, along with Vanessa and Valerie, was that we do a green wall, and essentially this would be a 3-tiered system where we go and plant a low shrub or a ground crawler, a tall grass, and then bushes. We would make, obviously, me, I'm a big fan of native species, so we would work with plants that are well adapted for drought and have high tolerance to our seasons in heat, as well as cold hardiness for future storms. This takes out the aggressive, punitive behavior of the HOA having to fine people, and it removes the insanely large costs of us maintaining homeowners' fences. There are additional benefits of this, right? It will help create shade along the sidewalks. It will help reduce the road noise to the homes that are behind the green wall. And on top of that, it will help reduce the amount of mowing that goes on along those thoroughfares. So I'm really excited about this. And right now we're working on getting bids from several landscapers to see the cost and what their recommendations are along these ways. One last thing as far as the benefits, think about the areas where it's just mud, where grass, especially that turf grass, doesn't grow. There are plenty of native species that can grow in the shade. That will help reduce a lot of that runoff that happens when we have heavy rains, and will help reduce mud along those walk paths. So more to come on that next month. 10, new business. Adobe Pro. This was a request from Raquel requesting that we pay for an Adobe suite for her. That way she could do digital signatures. I was flabbergasted with the request. Goodwin is a $40 billion company. I have no idea why they would have their community manager asking us for this license. Most IT departments will have a amount of license they can give out to their employees. Adobe seems to be something that as a management company you would have. So we definitely declined that, so she'll have to work with her management to get that approved from them, or just to borrow one of her peers' logins so that way she can print and sign things. B, combining all gov documents for residents. This is something that has been requested. I know if you go to the Town Square website that's listed in the description below for the Harris branch, you'll see all of the governing documents. Those are all scanned and then turned into PDF. There is quite a few of them, I believe. I know I've had to look through them before. You can Control F them and search for key terms, but there has been a request to combine all the governing documents, and so they are looking into that being Raquel and David. See, announcements for sidewalk repairs, road repairs, bike lanes, links included. I've already talked about that. Again, it's posted here on the channel. You should have seen a next door update. It's in the newsletter, and it came out on Town Square. So please, please, please help us out. Copy and paste and hit submit. Share it with your friends and neighbors. You don't even have to be a homeowner. The more of you who do it, the better it is. Give it to your family. Give it to your kids. I don't care. That'd be really awesome if we could get this to work. D, garage sale. First Saturday of April. So that's coming up. Look for the Town Square announcements. The signs will be out there on the Harris Branch Parkway. E, Easter event. The second Saturday of April. I think they have moved it to the 1st. We are hoping to have ponies, goats again, a bouncy castle. There should be an Easter egg hunt, face painting. I think this time we're looking into pizza over hot dogs. It's a lot easier, especially if folks have dietary restrictions, as well as serving it. So there will be more details on that. F, prioritize projects list for 2023. One that I already talked about is the pool plaster. There's the pump room with the pool as well. The amenity center office, the fence project, which should be wrapping up. G, board authority confirmations. This is a request from Vanessa. She wanted to understand exactly what it is each board position has the authority to do. That was discussed as far as educating new members. I think that's one thing we as the board really need to do better. H, structure of meeting minutes. Vanessa is the secretary, so she is reworking that, I believe, with Raquel. I, illegal dumping signs. This was something that was brought up to me by one of my neighbors happening along Farmhaven. There is this little section you'll see between the homes in the new neighborhoods. There are trucks that are going back there and dumping, and they have asked me to see if there's anything we can do about it. I explained to them, of course, the first thing we have to do is get signs up, otherwise APD won't do anything. So the first things first, we're looking into putting up signs along there so that way it says no illegal dumping. And then the other item is there is a restoration area along St Merryn. There is a creek there called Gilliland Creek. We did a tree planting there of over 700 trees, and there is an educational sign that the city of Austin has that we wanted to get made and put on those bird boxes that were installed, so that way folks know exactly what's going on. They don't just think, oh, this area is not getting mowed. One item that was not on this list, this was called the Emergency Response Committee. This is something that Vanessa and Valerie thought that the neighborhood needed as far as things that we need to do in events of natural disasters or any sort of thing like that. Getting information out to the community about stuff that the city offers and that we have as far as the HOA or community members that can help each other out. Those details will be fleshed out later. That's just a new item that has come up and will be on the agenda moving forward. One last thing I want to talk about is the brush cleanup. We have had a big delay in that, mainly because Sunscapes wanted to charge us a large amount of money to pick up a lot of the brush, when it turns out that if you call 311, the city is picking up that brush. The issue right now is that what brush has not been set to the side has not been picked up, so the board is working with Sunscapes and the city to figure out exactly what our next steps are. I know there's a lot of tree branches still broken and hanging. If you are a homeowner and you have that on your oaks, make sure you're getting those trimmed and get them cut right. Make sure you look up how to cut a tree correctly. You don't necessarily need to spray it with that foam right now, but you want to get that cut soon so that way that your tree can start healing. You don't want your tree sitting there with the bark ripped open, allowing for infestation to happen to it. You don't want to lose your old trees or all those years of growth. So make sure you're getting out there and cutting those correctly. And then if you have large damage to it, make sure you're talking to an arborist. I'll put a list of arborists below that were recommended to me by TreeFolks and the Keep Austin Beautiful group, so that way you can reach out, get on the waiting list now. You want to make sure that you are taking care of those trees. Back to the sunscapes in 311 as far as the city goes with the HOA, that's the last piece we have, is to have them and their arborists come out and do the high trimming that's needed for those branches that are bent over in the upper canopy of our trees. Once those are cut and placed at the side, then we'll most likely have to have those hauled off by a contractor. 11, adjourn meeting. Well, as always, I hope this has been informative to you. You're always welcome to join the meetings. If you want to stay up to date, hit subscribe. Again, don't forget to check the description for all the links to all the pertinent websites for our community. There's a lot of good stuff in there that you can stay apprised of. I hope everybody made it through the ice storm okay and is back up and running. And with that all being said, y'all stay safe out there. Take care. Bye.